All right, today we're diving into something really fascinating, a super detailed blueprint for a global society that was actually thought up back in the 20th century by a philosopher named Swami Sadashiva. It's this complete vision for how all of humanity could organize itself to achieve, well, total well-being.
But before we jump into his specific vision, let me just ask you this. If you had a totally blank slate, how would you design the perfect global society? Seriously, what would its leaders be like? What about its schools? What would the main goal even be? It's a massive question, one that people have been wrestling with for, well, forever.
Well, this text we're digging into today offers one really profound answer to that question. It's called the Universal Vision for a Global Human Society, and believe me, it lays out a whole system, from how an individual should think all the way up to a supreme global council. So let's take a look at how it all fits together.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the big idea, the core principle driving this whole thing. Then we'll look at the pretty unique leadership structure it proposes, the two-part education system that's designed to create those leaders, the new global institutions that would come from it, and finally, how it all connects to create what's meant to be a system of total harmony.
Okay, first up, the foundation. What is this whole society actually trying to do for people? What's the point of it all? Turns out, the answer comes down to one single, really powerful concept.
And that concept is Shreyas Prayas. It's a Sanskrit term, and it basically describes a state of complete well-being. See, it's got two parts. Prayas is all about worldly success and prosperity, the stuff we need and enjoy in our everyday lives. But Shreyas, that's the ultimate spiritual good, that feeling of a higher purpose and inner peace. The entire point of this society is to help every single person get both of those things, instead of having to choose one over the other.
So, if that's your goal, this balanced, total well-being for everyone, how on earth do you govern it? Well, this vision proposes a very specific pyramid of leadership, starting right at the very top with something called the Supreme Governing Council.
Here's how the structure works. It's a hierarchy, yeah, but it's based on your mindset and your merit. So you start with just the general members of society. From that massive group, national governing councils get elected. And the key here is that they specifically look for people who have a broad, universal worldview. And then, from the absolute best of the best of all those national councils, a single supreme governing council is formed to guide the entire planet. And this is where the whole idea gets really radical. The requirements to get on this council, they're not what you'd expect. We are not talking about being a savvy politician or a brilliant CEO. The qualifications are way deeper. A leader has to practice sarvasvaka tyaga, which means complete self-sacrifice. They need sarvakta darshita, the ability to literally see their own consciousness in every other being. They have to be totally devoted to the welfare of all. The text says their sense of I for their own body should be weak, but their sense of mind for the whole world should be incredibly strong. I mean, it's a model of leadership based entirely on selflessness, which is, well, it's pretty stark contrast to a lot of what we see today.
Now, you can't just expect leaders like that to pop up out of nowhere, right? That kind of mindset has to be carefully cultivated. And that brings us to the really unique educational system that this whole vision is built on.
The idea is to have two different kinds of global universities. On one hand, you've got the Shreyas Prayas University. This is for students who want to balance those worldly and spiritual goals. They study top-level science, economics, all of that, but every single subject is taught through the lens of global human welfare. These are the folks who become the future leaders of society. On the other hand, you have the Kaval Shreyas University. This is for people who are dedicated only to the spiritual path. Their whole education is practical, it's about universal consciousness and selfless service. They're trained to become the world's spiritual guides.
And this is where it all starts to click into place. The graduates from these two completely different types of universities, they're the ones who go on to form two new global bodies, and these become the twin pillars that govern the whole world.
And what you end up with is this really cool interconnected structure. It's a system where the political body and the spiritual body are designed to work together as partners, and both are guided by that small, elite Supreme Governing Council. And notice how the two main world bodies, one for nations, one for religions, they're designed to have equal weight. It's a balance of power, baked right into the heart of the system. So that first pillar is the world body of nations. You can kind of think of it as a supercharged United Nations. It's made up of all those graduates from the Shreyas Prayas University, the experts in economics, politics, social sciences. Their job is to manage all global affairs, but always with universal welfare as the #1 priority.
And then you have the second pillar, the world body of religions. This is where the graduates from the Kaval Shreyas University come in. Their role is to give spiritual guidance to all of humanity.
And, this is huge, to help harmonize and manage all the different religious traditions around the world, making sure they all work for the common good.
Okay, so we've got the political body and the spiritual body. But how do you actually make sure they, and all the national councils underneath them, stay in sync? How do you keep them from drifting apart and messing things up? This brings us to the final and maybe the most practical piece of this whole vision.
The entire system has this core safety feature built in, and it's designed to stop small mistakes from snowballing into giant catastrophes. As the text itself says, the goal is to create a system of checks and balances so that an error, in time, does not grow large and harm everyone. It's basically a built-in error correction mechanism.
And that mechanism? It's incredibly simple, but it's mandatory. A meeting. At least once a year, every single level of governance, from the local groups all the way up to those two big world bodies, they have to get together. They are required to share ideas, talk about problems, and make sure everybody is still pulling in the same direction. It's all about preventing what the text calls the natural error-prone tendencies of any group from spinning out of control. And that brings us right back to the ultimate goal. You've got these two world bodies, distinct but cooperative. One is focused on the material, political, and economic stuff. The other is focused on the spiritual, ethical, and religious harmony of humanity. And by supporting each other, they guide the whole world toward that state of Shreyas Preyas, a balanced life of peace, purpose, and prosperity for every single person. Now look, it is a huge, very idealistic vision. No doubt about it. But it leaves us with a really powerful question for right now, for our world. What single idea from this whole blueprint, whether it's the selfless leaders, the dual education system, or that fusion of spiritual and political governance, what one thing do you think is the most relevant or maybe the most needed for our world today?